Hello and welcome to TUC Half Hour. The TUC Half Hour is sponsored by the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria. The program highlights the activities of the union and its affiliates in Nigeria. Before I bring you the rest of the show, here's a trivia question for this week. What year was the International Labour Organization founded? TUC Half Hour will be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Comrade General Nuhu Adebayo Toro is the Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria. He assumed office in 2022. He is a seasoned labor leader with vast experience in leadership, industrial relations, policy development, and organizing. Comrade Toro has a PhD in sociology from the University of Abuja, a master's in social economy and labor from the University of Campinas, Brazil, and is an alumnus of the Global Labor University. Being a seasoned sociologist and experienced policymaker, our guest is making extensive contributions, adding enormous value in numerous international and national affiliations and committees, some of which are the Global Organizers Academy, Canada, the Global Advisory Council of the International Trade Union Confederation, ITUC, Africa, the Advisory Committee of the Federal Mortgage Bank, the National Labor Advisory Council, and most recently, the 2024 Tripartite Committee on National Minimum Wage, amongst others.
Over the past few months, we have seen significant development in the conversations between labor unions and the federal government about the plight of Nigerian workers, a conversation that has culminated in the new agreed minimum wage of 70,000 naira. But how did we get here? What was the journey like? And what does that even spell for the Nigerian workers? Joining me to have the conversation here today is Comrade Toro, PhD, the Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress. Thank you so much, Comrade, for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So regarding the new agreed minimum wage, can you walk us through the journey of how we got here? We've seen there was back and forth. We've seen we had proposed strike, intended strike actions. The labor union had a figure, the federal government came up with theirs, and now we're here at 70,000 naira. Just walk us through the journey and how we got here.
Well, thank you very much. If you go back memory lane in the history of the working struggle, the workers around the globe have never gotten anything except through struggle. We suggest that even the Haymarket struggle in Chicago, where we were able to get 8 hours work time in a day and maternity leaves and some benefit for workers, didn't come for free. It was a product of the struggle. So this is not an exception. Wages are the fabric that sustain the livelihood of a worker and his family. Right. So we weren't under any illusion when we demanded for a minimum wage. We knew it wasn't going to be rosy. Of course, we didn't just come up with a figure from the blues. We looked at the prevailing circumstances vis-a-vis cost of living index and what we think, in our opinion, can put food on the table of a worker, his wife, and 4 children. That was how we arrived at those figures you saw flying. But it is also important to stress the fact that in negotiation, when you go to negotiation, you don't have a fixation. You go with a free mind, haven't put on the table what your demands are, so that at the end of the day, head or tail, you know, whatever you are able to get will only reinforce our slogan, which says the struggle continues.
Okay.
So we, of course, will continue until the workers get what we think it's fair for them.
So do you think that 70,000 naira is fair? Because the ask initially was significantly higher, but we're here at 70,000 naira. And I've heard quite a lot of Nigerians pretty much think that it's still not fair, judging from the situation of the economy right now. What do you say about that?
Yeah, well, like I said, we have factored in a number of elements, the macro and microeconomic inflation. We've looked at the cost of living index. We've looked at the high cost of goods and services in the market before we arrive at what we arrived at. And don't forget, in negotiations, like I said, it is pertinent on the working people to ensure they keep their eyes on the ball, because during negotiation there are distractions here and there. That is why even in our campaign you will see that bulk of our campaign is centered around cutting down on wasteful spending. We believe strongly that if government cut down on wasteful spending, the argument about ability to pay will no longer exist, because they will be able to pay. So we kept on with our eyes on the ball, and eventually this is where we are. But like I said, in negotiation, you don't expect 100%. It is a win-win situation, and the element of give and take now set in. Of course, at the end of the day, both the employer and the employee, or the worker and the government, will feel, okay, we've won something at least, and that is where we are. But talking about the minimum wage itself, I think what is missing in the Nigerian context is recognition of the 4 pillars of decent work. And decent work is predicated on job creation, social dialogue, social protection, and the right at work. So if any of this concept is missing, automatically you will have no choice but to have this kind of nasty situation that Nigerian workers found themselves. Again, government and employers of labor most times don't understand that what minimum wage seeks to do is to fight poverty, because when the worker has some money in his pocket, of course, he will go to the market to purchase. And by so doing, he's fighting poverty instead of sitting idle. Again, another component that is very critical is minimum wage stimulates the economy, because if a worker, for instance, have money or have decent wages, he will have the purchasing power to go to the market to buy goods and services. So invariably, if producers or marketers have these goods stocked and the workers have no money to purchase, automatically the economy will be at a standstill. So the minimum wage has enormous benefit to both government in terms of reviving the economy and sustaining it and boosting it, and also putting food on the table of the worker. So head or tail, the minimum wage provides some succor to both government and the working people.
So if you were going to, say, highlight some of the gains or privilege of the new minimum wage on Nigerian workers as it stands now, what would you say?
Well,
if you're going to put them like in an order of priority, like a scale of preference.
It's not Uhuru yet. Like I said in my opening remarks, it's not Uhuru in the sense that you and I know that 70,000 naira in Nigeria of today cannot guarantee you a semi-foreign local bag of rice. Let's even say a local bag of rice, which suggests that are we now saying the worker will just buy a bag of rice and that's it? But again, we are not so mindful of the inflationary implication of having too much money chasing few goods. And we have asked our economics to do analysis on what they think. That was why we came up with the figure of 250. However, even though we weren't fixated on the 250. Right. Now, like I said, If you go to negotiations, you don't have anything at the back of your mind. Yes, you've made your demand, but it is the negotiation that will determine the output of everything at the end of the day. And that is what we saw playing out in the way and manner we negotiated. And Mr. President did something quite instructive. The minimum wage didn't stop at just 70,000 naira. It came with some incentives. For instance, there are organizations in the educational sector that have been on strike for quite a while now, owing to non-payment of their salary as a result of an industrial action that has protracted. Of course, in the course of the negotiation, Mr. President graciously gave approval that that money should be paid. Now, beside the minimum wage, we know what takes chunk of the worker's salary is transportation, because the government have failed to provide transportation from and to his working place. And the president also promised us that the CNG buses will be made available in no distant time, which is a plus, because if, for instance, the worker has a vehicle or a means of transportation from his house to his workplace and back, that will have eliminated the transportation component of the minimum wage. So again, the president has also promised that he is going to ensure that there are interventions to assist employers in the private sector in terms of what comes in, tariffs, taxes that come. So at the end of the day, you know, you will see that prices of goods and services in the market will drop because of this intervention. So if the president is true to his words and he pulls it through, I believe it will bring some succor. Like I said, it's not 100%, but it's better than nothing.
Right.
The Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria welcomes invited guests and members to the third edition of Pengasyn Energy and Labour Summit, PEALS 2024, with the theme, The Future of Nigeria's Oil and Gas Industry, Energy Mix, Energy Security, Artificial Intelligence, Divestment and Crude Oil Theft. Date is Wednesday, 21st to Friday, 23rd of August 2024 at the Congress Hall Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. Time 10 a.m. daily. Special guest of honor, Senator Heineken Lokobiri, Minister of State Petroleum Oil. Honorable Ekwerikwe Ekpo, Minister of State Petroleum Gas, Chairman Senate and House Committee on Petroleum Upstream, Downstream and Gas. Keynote speakers, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, National Security Advisor, Mele Kolo Kyari, Group CEO NNPC Limited, Engineer Gbenga Komolafe, Commission Chief Executive, Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Engineer Farouk Ahmed, Authority Chief Executive, Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NNDPRA, Mr. Felix Ogbe, Executive Secretary, NCDMB, and other prolific experts in the field. The event will round up with a gala night on Friday, 23rd of August that will see to the presentation of awards in recognition of winners of the Pengasyn National Essay Competition for secondary schools in Nigeria. Chief host, Comrade Engineer Festus Osifo, President, Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Pengasyn. Announcer, Lumumba Okubawa, General Secretary, Pengasyn.
And another significant development with the whole conversation is, you know, usually or before now, the conversation around reviewing the minimum wage will usually take about 5 years. But now it's been brought down to about 3 years. Can you just tell?
No, exactly. Of course, that is also another landmark achievement that we were able to get. We looked at the time frame, the time cycle of the minimum wage. In the Labour Act, if you check, it was 5 years preceding now. And part of the gain was that Mr. President said, okay, you guys want a reduction in the life cycle of the minimum wage negotiation, fine. I'm going to give you 3 years. 3 years, of course, between now and 3 years, I mean, even if inflation sets in, even if the naira devalues, which we don't pray for, at the end of the day, the worker has an opportunity to come and review his means of livelihood, which is a good thing. And I'm sure Nigerian workers are excited about this.
Okay, but away from the minimum wage and all of that, what are other pressing issues that the Trade Union Congress is, you know, matters that the Trade Union Congress is addressing currently?
Well, in the world of work, because of scarce resources, there will always be issues between employer and employee. Most especially, there's no way you discuss workers' issues without talking about the minimum wage, because that is the fabric. However, in the course of give and take, I mean, these workers know the numbers. Of course, they are the ones that process some of the income and expenditure that comes into the workplace. And if the workers feel such change, if the workers feel what should come to him is not forthcoming, of course, the workers no doubt will cry out. And that is why in most workplaces we have understanding with the employers. For instance, in the construction sector, they review their wages every year. And why they do that is because of all of these indices that I've explained to you around diminishing value of the naira, depreciation, high cost of living, so that if you negotiate a minimum wage for 100 naira last year, you agree with me that the value of that 100 naira last year will not equate the value this year. And that is why at sectorial level they have that kind of arrangement, which also minimize the unrest in that sector. So, but in the larger Nigerian context, there are a lot of issues confronting the workers. For instance, workers work in excess of 8 hours without getting paid their overtime, which also violates the labor law, because the labor law says normal working hour in Nigeria is 8 hours a day and 40 hours in a week. So any work done in excess should be treated as overtime. Most employers don't comply with that rule. So that is also part of the reasons why you see workers cutting corners, because if, for instance, I've worked in excess of 8 hours and I am deemed to be paid overtime and you don't pay, of course, you leave the worker with no option of trying to cut corners, which is also not in the interest of the employer. So beside the issue of working in excess of the agreed or required stipulated time, of course, there are a whole lot of unfair labor practices in workplaces. There are issues of sexual harassment to some of our female workers, which pins down the worker psychologically. I can go on and on unfair labor practices that happens in workplaces. So from that standpoint, you see, there will always be conflict. And that is why in each workplaces you have union in the domestic unit, so that if there are issues around workers' right, they are able to dispense with it. It is when they cannot handle it that they refer it to their union. Of course, by extension, those unions are affiliates of the NLC and the TUC. They will now bring it forth to us and we'll confront it. So invariably, in a nutshell, those are the issues confronting the Nigerian workers, and that is how far we have strived to ensure that the issues are dispensed with.
Okay, let's come back to the conversation around the minimum wage. I know that since the announcement of the new agreed minimum wage, the labor unions, the TUC as well, has faced several criticism from even Nigerians. There's been conversations around maybe the labor unions not taking a stance and shifting and things like that. How would you address that as a member of the TUC?
That is an opinion from an ignorant standpoint. I can tell you, it's not easy to negotiate. It's not easy. In fact, we deliberately attend trainings on collective bargaining and negotiations so that we can have the impetus, the pedigree to confront employers in terms when negotiations come up. It's an ignorant and pedestrian argument because they don't even understand what goes into negotiation. And again, like I told you, the principle of industrial relations and collective bargaining is give and take, a little to the right and a little to the left. And like I said, it also reinforces our slogan, the struggle continues. It has been historic because we don't expect 100%. That is why we try most times to strike at a balance so that we don't plunge the nation into a crisis that will consume all of us. Because we want minimum wage, which is legit, of course, does not mean we shouldn't also factor in the other generality of Nigerian people, of course, which are related to us one way or the other. So that assertion is not correct. I can tell you the genuine Nigerian workers appreciate this, because it's indeed a quantum leap from where we are coming. I can tell you that in some states, as I'm speaking to you, are not paying the 18,000 we agreed some donkey years ago, not to talk about the 30,000 naira. But here's the news. This time around, we are going to change our tactics. We will ensure, as against what happened in the past, because in the past, we will just issue a nationwide action to deal with the situation when we discover that state government or subnationals are not complying. But we are going to change our modus operandi this time around. If Bauchi state governor is not paying the minimum wage of 17,000 after it's been signed into law, we'll mobilize all our resources and our members. We'll go to Bauchi state and ensure that we remain in Bauchi until Bauchi state does that. And again, that is our own form of naming and shaming employers and state governors that are refusing to comply with the law. Because if you generalize and you have a nationwide action, you will be punishing governors that are faithful in payment of minimum wage and cordoning those that are not paying. So this time around, we will confront the state. We will take them state by state and sector by sector. Any state governor that is not paying will go to the state and remain there until he complies with the Labor Act. So you can see it's a different ball game entirely. And I'm telling you, sincerely, Nigerian workers are excited. We recently rose from our National Executive Council meeting. NEC of TUC comprises of all the 36 states, FCTs, and all our industrial affiliates. We had a conversation because we don't even have the technical competence to say, Mr. President, we have accepted or otherwise. When Mr. President made that offer, we told him that, fine, we appreciate the offer, but certainly we have to go back to our constituency to present the offer that has been made. That is what we did. And I can tell you, unanimously, the workers in Nigeria are appreciative of this gesture because they know this is not the end. Of course, in 3 years' time, we'll also have an opportunity to press further.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show. I appreciate you having this conversation with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and God bless Nigerian workers.
Amen. TUC Half Hour will be right back after the break. Don't go anywhere.
President Bola Tinubu has signed the minimum wage bill, which sets the national minimum wage at 70,000 naira into law. The president signed the bill during the Federal Executive Council meeting at the council chamber with a National Assembly delegation led by the President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio. The Minister of Finance and the Minister of State Labor, who were among some of the ministers invited to speak by the President, said, everything will be done to ensure the act is implemented speedily.
Every effort will be made to ensure that there is speedy and full implementation of this new all-important Minimum Wage Act, definitely at the federal level, but also we will encourage that this is a national minimum wage.
Have shown that they are ready to walk the talk. So congratulations to Nigerian workers, and we are glad that not just in 5 years, in about 3 years' time, we'll be reviewing the minimum wage, and by what has transpired this afternoon, by all the things that President is doing, I know that we are going to come back strong.
The Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria welcomes invited guests and members to the 3rd edition of Pegasus Energy and Labour Summit, PEALS 2024, with the theme, The Future of Nigeria's Oil and Gas Industry, Energy Mix, Energy Security, Artificial Intelligence, Divestment and Crude Oil Theft. Date is Wednesday, 21st to Friday, 23rd of August 2024 at the Congress Hall Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. Time 10 a.m. daily. Special guest of honor, Senator Heineken Lokobiri, Minister of State Petroleum Oil. Honorable Ekwerikwe Ekpo, Minister of State Petroleum Gas, Chairman Senate and House Committee on Petroleum Upstream, Downstream and Gas. Keynote speakers, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, National Security Advisor, Mele Kolo Kyari, Group CEO NNPC Limited, Engineer Gbenga Komolafe, Commission Chief Executive, Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Engineer Farouk Ahmed, Authority Chief Executive, Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NNDPRA, Mr. Felix Ogbe, Executive Secretary, NCDMB, and other prolific experts in the field. The event will round up with a gala night on Friday, 23rd of August that will see to the presentation of awards in recognition of winners of the Pengassan National Essay Competition for secondary schools in Nigeria. Chief host, Comrade Engineer Festus Osifo, President, Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Pengassan. Announcer, Lumumba Okubawa, General Secretary, Pengassan.
And that's this week's episode of TUC Half Hour. But before I wrap up the show, here's the answer to the trivia question. The International Labour Organization was founded in 1919. Thank you so much for joining me. Do not forget to follow us across all social media platforms using the handles displayed on your screen. I am Faiz Osui. See you next week.